So your question is, how can happiness be eclipsed? Why happiness disappeared? Or why
No,
happiness...
what is that process? What is that mechanism that takes the happiness away? That takes the being away, just pure being, because pure being is happiness. It's just being. It just is. It's by definition positive.
Undefinable. Being is undefinable. So yes, I hear you.
All right.
I hear you. Let me maybe comment on
Thank
this.
you.
So first maybe we should slightly, I know it's all in the language, right? Language conceals truth fantastically all the time. That's what language does. So we need to, at every possible moment when we gather like this, to use language at the best of our capacity, so that we can somehow penetrate that what otherwise language always conceals. Because everything spoken, everything that is quoted in terms, presents itself as terms, nothing other than concepts, nothing other than that what essentially prevents us from direct experience of our beingness. That it prevents, it cushions and prevents at the same time. You see? Maybe the impact would be too strong. Language is what creates this whole notion of what the world is and we are in this world and how it is all, it's everything. From the dishwasher to Trump president, right? Everything is that. Spinning, everything is working, like everything is somehow making sense or doesn't, because it's all subjected to the language. But we give our best. So it's not that we have all this aforementioned. We are all this. It's not that we have this. We are. So this first reflective proposition here is that we are all this. And how come in all this that we are awareness, and it's a direct experience. It's not a hypothetical thought, and it's immediately known here and now. But at some times we are more aware than other times. We know that too. We know there is a bodily awareness, and the bodily awareness doesn't last all the time. We know that we get tired, and nervous system cannot vibrate in the same frequency in the waking state. It needs to repose, and we go into rest, we sleep, and dreaming state of consciousness takes over. We know that we also fall into a deeper realm of the dreamless state, where no sensations, no feelings, no thoughts, nothing is experienced. Nothing. It's void, blackness. Poor man's nirvana, right? Poor man's samadhi. It's that nature's mechanism now we're speaking about, how nature made sure that we don't go bonkers and we have that switch off. That's literally, right? You put your computer on sleep mode, but then too many windows are open, the operating program doesn't want to do it anymore. So the only option is restart or shut it down. So deep sleep is that. Everything shuts down, withdrawn. Right? Just as the waking state, everything is active. There's a full coordination between the body and the mind. Senses are fully functioning, supplying information, and mind interprets it, right? Integrates. And all that is being led by the power of our awareness. In Waking state it's that's the affair of the waking state. And then the senses begin to be withdrawn into the mind. They begin to be withdrawn. Energetic movement, that this is how it happens. As the tortoise draws its limbs into its shell, the senses begin to withdraw, and organs of cognition, everything slumbers down. Only mind now revels in its own realm. This is the affair of the dream state of consciousness. Dreaming takes over, and the body is still like a log of wood, and yet we're running, flying, doing this, doing that, some phantasmagoric things, or just downright very, very like reality of the waking, no? And yet further pull inward. The mind now needs to rest. It cannot be active all the time. It's been active in the waking and in the dreams. It's now ready to be pulled further, and it is being withdrawn into the causal realm, into the domain of the deep sleep. And that's where nothing is experienced. There's no mind, there's no ego in that state, there's no individuality in that state. In the deep sleep is a total rest. You see? So, are there any mechanics? You're asking. What are the mechanics of how the happiness can be overshadowed? What is now maybe a kind of just a suggestion for you to contemplate on, is that everything is available to us as beings who are capable of being aware. Everything. There's a simply, if you will, unlimited, unbounded field of all potentialities. And because we are primarily, above all else, prior to anything, that pure being, that pure awareness, everything is available, everything is a possibility. Not the other way around. It's not because we become aware whilst we are managed to gain somehow this amazing nervous system. This is a reductionistic perspective, right? If we don't speak of consciousness as a byproduct of some physiological activity, chemical, electrical activity in the brain, then something else is taking place. Because if we are to speak from that perspective, then of course very quickly we will corner ourselves. There are no choices. If it's all down to some kind of marvel of evolution, that we at some point became aware, right? That somehow we became conscious. We were not conscious, we were just primitive organisms, amoeba, vibrating there somewhere deep down at the bottom of the ocean. And then in that, some billions of years of vibration brought us here, and we're suddenly aware of ourselves and just burdened by the question of who am I? No, I can't be real. So there must be something else going on. So in a way it's easier to have that stand, that awareness is prior, that we are awareness, aware, conscious beings. And with that, this interesting proposition that everything is a possibility. And if everything is a possibility, then life in misery is a possibility, just as life filled with bliss is a possibility. It's what awareness begins to entertain and where it settles, where it finds its most resonance. That's what makes this so uneasy. That's what makes it so uneasy. We can be anything, in a way, anything. Literally, figuratively, and metaphorically, all at once. It's what awareness entertains where the emphasis goes. And it then, if you will think itself into existence, it structures itself into existence. It creates these structures. These structures become more complex, they replicate themselves. And yet it remains awareness at all times. But there is this also possibility in this awareness, because it's always self-referral. It's always with reference to the self. It's self-referral. Then that opens a possibility for everything and anything. And that is why now, jumping into this more kind of like, let's say, practical aspects of this, applicable aspects of what spirituality and why spirituality is important today. And it is that aspect that because we can think ourselves into existence by virtue of our own awareness, that's what makes it all into a possibility. You see? It's like in a hologram, it can become anything it wishes to become. So, this is a very important reminder as well. An important reminder. An important reminder that we can speak of mechanics. Of course, there are mechanics of how we slumber into becoming less aware. Yes, there are mechanics. There are various traditions. Some traditions are more emphatic, more precise of what exactly happens. At what point that what illumines everything suddenly is overshadowed somehow. But what I wanted to simply bring your awareness to is that aspect of all is possible. We mold our reality by virtue of how aware we are. So that happiness versus its opposite here can also be understood in that way. It's simply a possibility which awareness molds itself into. How it happens is another story. But it's a worthy reminder. A worthy reminder. Therefore, especially when it comes to the healing work, or when it comes to the taking ourselves from a situation of the predicament, and the story here is with that which uplifts itself by virtue of the self. Because nothing else externally can do that. It has to happen by virtue of being aware. It happens from that place, and it cannot happen any other way. So therefore that self here, since it is self-referral, it is always about self-actualization, self-healing, self. So in other words, that understanding, that perspective, is our notion of ourselves, literally, is by virtue of how awareness has relationship with itself with regard to that aspect of self-awareness, of how self-aware we are. The more aware we are, the more happy we are, regardless of anything that happens to us circumstantially. Because it's simply a matter of fact. When we speak of being, when we speak of human being or being human, it would be good to maybe decode that. We use it sporadically and seldom think what these two terms represent. The term being represents unfathomable aspect of ourselves. It's that what stands for absolute truth. It's that which is changeless. It's abstract, unconceivable. It's the term, there is a term in Indian tradition spoken of as being consciousness bliss, Sat-chit-ananda. You've heard it, many of you have heard that term, right? It's a most commonly used term. It's the ground of consciousness, right? Ground of all our experience. Sat is that what represents being. It's inaccessible. There's no way to contemplate that. It's abstract. By virtue of being aware, that aspect in Sat-chit-ananda, which stands for consciousness, affords a possibility of being accessed, if you will, by the fact that it's not just being. If it was just being, there will be no way to contemplate it, no way to know it. By virtue of that second aspect, as chit is consciousness, we can be aware of the fact that we are here as a being. Being becomes aware of itself because of the aspect of consciousness. And that brings tremendous joy. And that is represented by Ananda. You see? Sat-chit-ananda. Being consciousness bliss. Being is incomprehensible, abstract, beyond any comprehension, beyond any access whatsoever. But through the power of consciousness and that what gives joy in being able to be aware of anything, this whole, if you will, totality of what we are is being expressed in that perfect formula. That's why Sat-chit-ananda is understood to be as the very essence of who we are. And that essence is not nothing. It has quality. And that quality is expressed through being, consciousness, bliss. And that's what the term human being or being human really represents, even in English language. Even in English language, that's what it really represents. We cannot speak of human outside of being. It's a human being.